Now, the other point that is actually this praying in the street business hides is the reality that France is a Catholic nation. And in fact, one of the biggest arguments about Rashida Dati, who was a Muslim and became Minister of Justice, was that you cannot have a Muslim with the Islamic ideas of justice ruling or governing or making decisions about the French state. Now, Rashida Dati was a woman who had blended into the French society. She was a woman who had a child out of marriage, who refused to tell anybody who the father is, who has constantly argued that her religion is irrelevant, the gender is irrelevant, she is there on her merits. It doesn't actually stop the media to brand her again as odd, as not belonging, because the sense of belonging is actually defined by faith as well as color, as well as your appearances, which means that Muslim women as a category are excluded in most of the cases. And again, Dr. Berkey very kindly gave us the data about what happens to minorities. When you divide that by gender, you find all of the negatives shooting right up. And the problem actually is such that even Saida Warsi, who is the first Muslim woman in the cabinet, is eventually reduced or rises to the occasion to talk about Islamophobia. And the interesting thing is, when she dared to speak, after all, in a university, on a platform like this, about her experience and about the experience of otherization by faith, exclusion by faith, the media absolutely erupted. So that as a minor kind of minor in all of this, I was inundated by phone calls. And I actually spent the day before yesterday rushing from studio to studio, from saying she's right. And of course then having absolutely ridiculous encounters with sort of Jeremy Vine producing somebody who tells me that I insulted him because I said he was prejudiced. And the stuff that was coming out of his mouth was absolutely unbelievable. But somehow my fault for saying that he's prejudiced. Because you're not prejudiced if you're stating a fact. And of course, the fact in all kinds of shapes is Britain is egalitarian, Britain does not recognize religion, we are all in the same boat. And the myth of secularism is so deep-rooted that recently, and unintentionally, I ended up in a discussion with the Speaker of the House of Lords, who's a wonderful woman. I mean, they call the House of Lords the matriarchy because it's actually run by women. And they say it's run by women and for women, which is a bit of an exaggeration. But anyway, but she actually said to me that she thought Britain is a secular nation. And I had to point out to her that every day that the House sits, we begin with a prayer. And the prayer is not a prayer to God, anytime. It's a Christian prayer. And the prayer is led by a bishop. And so that in the House of Lords, we have a group of bishops, we have a prayer every day that we sit, and yet the Speaker of the House thinks that this is a secular country because these are just rituals. Well, I would suggest that rituals actually define the rhythms of our lives. Rituals provide parameters which set the boundaries, set the tempo, set what we do and how we do it into an everyday context. And if rituals belong to a particular faith, by their very nature, they exclude others. And the moment you begin to have a category of people defined ritualistically as the other, and this definition confirmed day after day after day, this understanding of who the we is and who the other is becomes deeply rooted and spoken, but absolutely and clearly understood, practiced, and taken for granted. Therefore, it becomes considerably harder for people to start contesting that. And I remember when the government was introducing the laws against racism or against racist language or against racist treatment, my husband, who is born in New Zealand and is an atheist to the core, and I were having really fierce arguments, because he was just saying, you are curtailing the liberty of people to say what they think. And if people can't say what they think, then it causes more conflicts, more difficulty. We are a liberal country. We are allowed to say what we like. And I just felt, excuse me, if what you say belittles me, if what you say disempowers me, if what you say prevents me from exercising my right to liberty, then we can't be equal. We can't have the same rights. And I think that this is an argument that has been put again and again and has not been won. And one of the examples of the defeat that we have so far is in the extraordinarily rapid rise of Islamophobia from the moment of 9/11 and particularly 7/7, which actually has not abated. And this is the problem. It has not gone away. And what I find extraordinary is that from one day to the next, I, as an individual, was suddenly defined not by my politics, not by my gender, not by my nationality of birth or nationality that I have acquired since, but by my faith. And what this actually does is put all Muslims in a quandary. What am I going to do with this label which has been ascribed to me as the prevailing label? Once the label is Muslim, you have a choice. Either you adopt it with great pride, or you abandon it. I would argue that Rashida Dati's suggestion that she abandons it didn't work for her. As a result, it's hardly surprising that a large number of Muslim women choose to cover, not only as a political act, but as an act of choice, as an exclamation of pride in who they are, and as a demand for their right to continue to be. So what we need to perhaps consider is, why would women be reduced to strategies such as this? Thank you.